Well, it's an important conference. It's part of a quite long process that started 50 years ago with the Stockholm Conference, when we first understood that environmental issues are really global and we need a lot of collaboration. And this then became also in 1992 the Rio Summit, which is part of that, when we got the global conventions, we got something called Agenda 21. And then also we got the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030 in 2015, and now we have the Stockholm+50 conference. And this is part of the action, the decade of action that the United Nations have proclaimed to really speed up the implementation of sustainability strategies in terms of climate transition, but also, of course, in terms of biodiversity and poverty and all these socio-economic dimensions. So the Stockholm+50 is really putting a focus on those critical sustainability issues. And of course, you can argue with current situation in the world, we see conflicts again, we see a quite tough geopolitical situation. These kind of conferences are very important to gather world leaders, not just from politics, but also from academia, from civil society, from business, from indigenous peoples, all these kind of people, to have an open dialogue about how can we speed up implementation and reach the global goals. And that's really what Stockholm+50 is all about.
And in this dialogue, what outcomes do you wish to see, and how do you evaluate the process so far?
Well, it's difficult to say. I think the process has been quite interesting. They've had a lot of dialogues, which is important before the meeting, so people aren't just standing up there and start to talk. It's always very important with these processes beforehand to really set what are the critical issues we need to discuss. They're going to have a number of leadership dialogues at Stockholm+50 to exactly have that kind of dialogue, but based on already processes that have been ongoing for quite some time. The outcome is always a bit difficult. I think the ambition is not to have major political statements and so on, and that's not really what the world needs. So I think you should, okay, there will be some kind of formal outcome. I'm not sure exactly what that will be. From my perspective, the most important outcome is the meeting in itself, the fact that you can actually gather politicians from all over the world, industry leaders from all over the world, civil society from all over the world, to have constructive discussions and really try to move things forward. The dynamics is there in the meetings among the people. Then what the formal sort of documents and outcomes are, maybe less important. The meeting is the important part.
And you mentioned before that there are all these different actors involved. Yes. So what role can business play to drive this vision that we have towards CO2 neutrality forward?
Well, business play a critical role. I mean, politicians can set the frameworks, they can set the legal frameworks, they can, of course, they set taxes. I mean, everything that sort of governs our society. Civil society, they can push from below and really engage people. We have good examples of that, of course, through history, most recently with Fridays for Future and Greta Thunberg. I mean, really getting that engagement going. And many also civil society working out among people in society. Business is critical because that's where a lot of the economic development is. That's where we get a lot of the economic welfare. So that's one aspect. I mean, that's what drives economy. But the second part is, of course, also that business is critical in terms of innovation, entrepreneurship, the scaling up of new technologies, all these kinds of things. But also because business is global today. So sustainability is a global issue. Climate change is a global issue. Politics struggle sometimes, but for many businesses, global value chains really connects the world. So business must be on board if we want to reach some kind of success in this meeting. What I also would like to say, one aspect there, leadership is key. So in many of these meetings, you see different initiatives being launched. It can be about getting rid of deforestation. It can be about certain climate actions in different sectors. In many of these initiatives, business is also an important partner, both because they have the financial muscles, but they also have the skills, the know-how, competence, and of course, again, also the issue of innovation and entrepreneurship. So business is absolutely key.
And what role does Germany play, or what role can Germany play in the Stockholm+50 conference? Well,
Germany is a big country in the EU and in Europe. The EU and Europe is constantly talking about the need for leadership, the fact that we should, as a continent, take the leadership in this transition. The reason being, we have welfare states, We have challenges, I'm not saying that, but we have welfare states, we have high level of technologies, we have very strong social systems in general in Europe if you compare to many other parts of the world. Of course, Germany, being one of the big actors in Europe, also really need to take that leadership on board. So I think the role of countries like Germany, France, some of the big countries in the EU, to be active at Stockholm+50, to really drive this positive dialogue, of course together with all the other member states, that's key. That is absolutely essential. So I hope that Germany will be there with a strong delegation from policy and politics, but not least also, again, from industry and civil society.
And last but not least, do you think that the conference can be a breakthrough and speed up this transition towards a more sustainable future?
A breakthrough is difficult to define what it means. From my perspective, I've worked in international policy processes my whole life, and it's quite often difficult to say directly when a meeting has taken place, was it a breakthrough or not? It depends very much what is happening afterwards. You could say that, Agenda 21 and the Rio Conventions, they were established in 1992. And, for instance, the Climate Convention has been a breakthrough, but quite late. Later on, it takes time. So it's difficult to really say that. That's maybe not the most important, because if you focus on, we have to have a breakthrough, it quite often becomes too much focus on, we need to have this deliverable, we need a ministerial declaration, we need this, big words. For me, Stockholm+50, these kind of conferences, they are even more important almost as working conferences to make sure that we really continue to put focus on these really important issues for our societies, the development of our societies. That is really important. If it's going to be a breakthrough or not, we'll see after, maybe the day after or maybe a longer time after. I'm sure important things will happen there and come out of the meeting. That's absolutely no doubt.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.